Subscribe for more Templar mysteries. The silence on the pavement was the first error. London does not do silence. Especially not here, near the sprawling stone lions of Trafalgar Square, where the air is usually a solid wall of diesel fumes, shutter clicks, and the drone of a dozen languages colliding. But at 14:15 on a Tuesday, a small, circular void had opened up near the north parapet. It was a vacuum in the crowd, marked only by a flutter of yellow police tape that looked obscenely bright against the gray slate. Daniel Hargreaves ducked under the tape. He did not ask for permission. He moved with the momentum of a man who believes his press pass is a shield, though deep down, he knew it was just plastic. "Sir, this is a closed cordon," a young constable stepped forward, hand raised. He looked too young to be guarding a crime scene, his eyes darting nervously towards his superior officer. Daniel ignored the hand. He pulled his dictaphone from his trench coat pocket, his thumb hovering over the record button. Daniel Hargreaves. Investigative journalism. "I was meeting Elena Ward here 5 minutes ago. Where is she?" His voice was clipped. Neutral. He was not asking out of fear yet, he was asking for data. The constable hesitated. "There's been an incident. A witness reported a disturbance." A disturbance. Daniel scanned the ground. It was pristine. No scuff marks. No dropped handbag. No shattered smartphone screen. "Show me the struggle. Show me where that S written on the ground." "That's the problem, sir," the constable lowered his voice. There was not one. Daniel pressed record. The tiny red light was the only anchor he had left. "Talk to me. This is on record." "We have 3 witnesses," the officer said, gesturing vaguely at the crowd behind the barrier. "The lady with the pushchair says Miss Ward got into a black saloon car. She says a man in a gray suit held the door open for her. Very polite." "And the others?" "The busker over there claims it was a white delivery van. No windows. Said she was forced in." "And the third?" "The third says she just walked away. Into the crowd. Alone." Daniel felt a cold prickle of irritation at the base of his neck. That does not line up. Human memory is flawed, yes, but not this flawed. A black saloon and a white van are not matters of perspective, they are different realities. "Cameras," Daniel snapped. He looked up at the CCTV dome mounted on the lamp post, its black eye staring directly at the spot where Elena should have been standing. "This is the most watched square in London. Pull the footage." The constable shifted his weight. He looked uncomfortable. "We did, sir. Traffic control pulled the feed immediately. And it's corrupted. From 1410 to 1415. The image goes soft. Pixelated. Like a heat haze." Daniel stared at the empty pavement. A chill that had nothing to do with the wind cut through him. Cameras fail. Hard drives crash. Witnesses lie. But they do not all happen in the same 5-minute window unless someone conducts the orchestra. He walked over to the busker, a scruffy man packing away a guitar. "You saw the white van," Daniel said. It was not a question. The man nodded vigorously. "White Transit. Dirty plates. Pulled up right on the curb." "Did she scream?" "No." "Did she fight?" The busker paused. He frowned, looking at his own hands as if the memory was slippery. "No. Actually, she dropped something. A book. Thick leather cover. Looked old." "Where is it?" Daniel spun around, scanning the ground again. "The driver picked it up," the busker said. "He got out. Picked it up. Dusted it off. And he handed it back to her." Daniel froze. "He handed it back. And she took it." "Yeah." She nodded at him. Like she was saying thank you. "Then she got in." Daniel stepped back, the noise of the city rushing back into his ears. Elena Ward was brilliant, paranoid, and terrifyingly rational. She did not get into vans with strangers. Unless the stranger had something she wanted. Or unless she knew the van was coming. He pulled out his mobile and dialed her number. He did not expect an answer, but he expected the voicemail. He expected her crisp, academic voice telling him to leave a detailed message. Instead, the line clicked. A dry, synthetic silence followed. The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again. Not switched off. Not busy. Not in service. Daniel checked his watch. It had been 14 minutes since she vanished. To scrub a phone number from the national grid takes 24 hours of bureaucracy or a security clearance that does not exist on public records. He pocketed the phone. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing, assembling a terrifying logic chain. This was not a kidnapping. A kidnapping is messy. It leaves debris. This was an extraction. It was an edit. This is not speculation, he whispered to the dictaphone, turning away from the confused police. This is a trail. And it was scrubbed before it even started. The safety of Daniel's apartment felt fraudulent. The locks on the door, the double glazing, the VPN on his laptop, they all felt like paper walls now. He sat in the dark, the blue light of his monitor cutting across his face. He needed to work fast. If they had scrubbed her phone, her cloud backups were next. He accessed the shared server they used for their joint investigations. The folder was titled Templar Mythos V4. Elena had been obsessed with the Templars for months. Not the Dan Brown version, she despised the romanticism of it. She was interested in the money. The logistics. How an organization could dissolve in the 14th century and yet its assets, land, banking routes, debts, seemed to evaporate into the pockets of other institutions without a single coin dropping. Daniel opened the document history. Last edited, today, 1345. 30 minutes before she disappeared. He scrolled to the bottom. The text was typical Elena, dense, academic, referencing obscure land deeds in France and maritime logs from Portugal. But then, the tone shifted. The last paragraph was not a conclusion. It was a list. Query, why do we assume the knights were the architects? Evidence suggests they were merely the container. Look for the custodians. Look for Rourke. Rourke, Daniel muttered. He opened a new tab. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He did not use Google, he used the deep web indexers Elena had taught him to navigate. Caleb Rourke. The results were sparse, but specific. No LinkedIn profile. No Facebook. But his name appeared in the leaked manifest of a seized cargo ship in Macau. It appeared in an auction house catalog in Geneva, listed as a private consultant for pre-Sumerian antiquities. Daniel pulled up an image from a forgotten forum on archaeology. Caleb Rourke. Mid-40s. Sun-damaged skin. Eyes that looked like they were calculating the resale value of the camera taking the picture. He was standing in a trench in Syria, holding a jagged piece of metal that should not have existed in that geological stratum. This was not a historian. This was a looter. A grave robber with a corporate budget. Daniel leaned back. The pieces began to click into a disturbing shape. Hypothesis, Elena found something real. Not a myth, but a physical asset. Rourke found out she knew where it was. Rourke took her. It was clean. It was logical. It was a simple story of greed and leverage. But as Daniel reached for his coffee, his eyes caught something on the screen. The document history log. Elena had not just written the name Rourke at 1345. She had highlighted it. And she had linked it to a file path. C/user/E Ward, local, drafts, bait. Docs. Daniel blinked. Bait. He tried to open the link, but the file was corrupted. No, not corrupted. Locked. And then, his screen flickered. A new window popped up. It was not a system error. It was a chat terminal. Plain text. Black background. System, identity confirmed, D. Hargreaves. System, we have been waiting for you to make the connection. Daniel stared at the cursor blinking. We. He typed, who is this? The reply was instantaneous. It did not type out character by character, it appeared as a complete block of text, as if it had been pasted from a pre-written script. System, names are not relevant. Continuity is relevant. You are looking for MS. Ward. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. He typed, "Where is SHE? System, she is in transit. She has initiated the procedure. You have a role to play, Mr. Hargreaves. Do not pursue the van. Pursue the logic. System, go to the St. Jude archive. Ask for the 1912 catalog. Brother Matthias will expect you." The terminal window closed itself. The document deleted itself before his eyes. The cursor returned to the empty desktop. Daniel sat in the silence of his room. This was not a kidnapping. Elena had left a breadcrumb trail. And something, was making sure he followed it. He grabbed his coat. "Show me where it's written," he muttered, repeating his mantra like a prayer. He was going to find the book. He was going to find the truth. Even if the truth was something he could not put in a headline. The address for the street. Jude Archive led to a blind alley in Southwark, shadowed by the glass shard of the Shard skyscraper. There was no sign. Just a heavy steel door set into Victorian brickwork, painted a dull, council estate grey. Daniel checked the address again. It felt wrong. He expected a library, a cathedral, or at least a security checkpoint. This looked like the service entrance to a forgotten boiler room. He pressed the buzzer. There was no crackle of static. No, who is it? The lock simply disengaged with a heavy, expensive thunk. Daniel pushed the door open and stepped out of the London drizzle into a corridor that smelled of ozone and dry, recycled air. The silence was absolute. The noise of the city had been amputated the moment the door clicked shut behind him. At the end of the hall sat a desk. Behind it sat a man who looked less like a monk and more like a high-end actuary. He wore a charcoal suit that fit too perfectly. His head was shaved, skin pale, his expression one of polite, infinite patience. This was Brother Matthias. Daniel walked up to the desk, his footsteps echoing too loudly on the polished concrete. He pulled out his press pass, though it felt like a child's toy in this room. "I am looking for, Mr. Hargreaves," the man interrupted. His voice was smooth, devoid of friction. "Your arrival was anticipated. Please, sit." He did not gesture to a chair. He simply stated the instruction. Daniel remained standing. He placed his dictaphone on the desk, right between them. "I am not here for a chat. I am here for Elena Ward. And I am recording this." Matthias looked at the device, then up at Daniel. His eyes were unblinking. Documentation is encouraged. Accuracy is the goal. "Where is she?" Daniel demanded, leaning forward. "I know she did not just disappear. I know about the van. I know about the phone records. The subject is in transit," Matthias said. He did not say Elena. He said the subject. "Her trajectory is currently stable." Stable. She was shoved into a van. "She was collected," Matthias corrected, his tone dropping a fraction of a degree in temperature. "Custody was transferred. As per the schedule." Daniel stared at him. The man was not denying it. He was not threatening legal action. He was talking about a kidnapping as if it were a logistics report. "Who are you?" Daniel asked. "And do not give me the Brother Matthias nonsense. Who do you work for?" Matthias folded his hands on the desk. "The designation of the organization is irrelevant to your function. You view history as a sequence of events. We view it as a sequence of liabilities. Miss Ward has become a liability. So you took her to silence her?" "Incorrect." Matthias opened a drawer and slid a thin, gray folder across the desk. "We do not silence the signal, Mr. Hargreaves. We contain the noise. Miss Ward believes she has found a gap in the timeline. A persistent error. She calls them the first custodians." Daniel froze. The phrase from Elena's draft. She thinks she can leverage this information, Matthias continued, speaking slowly, as if explaining gravity to a toddler. She believes knowledge is power. She is mistaken. Knowledge is radiation. It requires shielding. Daniel grabbed the folder. He opened it. Inside was not a ransom note. It was a flight manifest. Private charter. Departing London City Airport 1 hour ago, headed for a remote airstrip in Turkey, near the Göbekli Tepe site. And there was a passenger list. 1. Elena Ward. 2. Caleb Rourke. Rourke, Daniel breathed. You reworking with the grave robber. Mr. Rourke is a necessary variable, Matthias said. He is motivated by profit. Profit is predictable. Predictability is safe. He is going to kill her. Intent is not a mitigating factor, Matthias replied coldly. The outcome has been simulated. Miss Ward requires a witness. She requires you. Daniel looked up. Me. You are the journalist. You are the one who verifies reality for the public. If a tree falls in the forest and no one writes an article about it, the tree remains theoretical. Matthias stood up. It was a dismissal. Go to Turkey, Mr. Hargreaves. Observe. Record. But do not interfere with the containment procedure. The narrative has already been written. You are merely the spell checker. And if I refuse? Daniel challenged. If I go to the police right now with this tape? Matthias finally smiled. It was a small, tight movement of the lips that did not reach his eyes. Then you will have an excellent recording of a man in an office discussing logistics. There is no crime here, Daniel. Only administration. We will proceed. Location, 24 hours later. Sanliurfa, southeastern Turkey. The heat was a physical weight. The air smelled of dust, spices, and diesel. Daniel stood on the balcony of a cheap hotel, overlooking the chaotic streets. He had not slept. The flight had been a blur of anxiety and research. He had tracked Rourke. It was not hard. As Matthias had said, Rourke was predictable. Men like Caleb Rourke did not hide, they just moved to places where the law was cheaper to buy. Daniel's phone buzzed. An encrypted message from an unknown number. It was a location pin. A dig site on the outskirts of the ancient ruins. He rented a jeep. The drive took him out of the city, into the arid, rolling hills where civilization had supposedly begun 12,000 years ago. When he arrived at the coordinates, he did not find a secret lair. He found a bustling excavation camp. Tents, generators, hired local labor. And in the center of it all, shouting at a foreman, was Caleb Rourke. Daniel killed the engine and stepped out. He kept his hands visible. Rourke saw him. He did not reach for a gun. He grinned. A wide, shark-like grin that showed too many teeth. Hargreaves. Rourke shouted over the noise of a generator. The British press arrives. I told her you'd come. I told her you could not resist the smell of a story. Daniel walked up to him, stopping just outside striking distance. Where is she, Rourke? She's busy. Rourke wiped sweat from his forehead with a dirty rag. She's downstairs. In the dark. Where she likes to be. Downstairs. We found it, mate, Rourke laughed, sweeping his arm towards a gaping hole in the earth, reinforced with modern steel beams. Or rather, she found it. I just paid for the shovels. The academic types, they think history is in books. It's not. It's in the dirt. And it's for sale. You kidnapped her. Kidnapped. Rourke scoffed. I offered her a ride. She practically jumped in. She's not a victim, Danny boy. She's the one holding the map. Rourke stepped closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The smell of stale tobacco and confidence rolled off him. Everything has a price. That's my rule. But this thing down there, she says it's not for selling. She says it's for keeping. She's talking crazy. Custodians. Ancient locks. I do not care about the philosophy. I care about the auction. Let me see her, Daniel said. Now. Go ahead, Rourke gestured to the dark tunnel leading underground. But be warned. The Elena you knew? The one who writes nice little articles. She's gone. What's down there is something else. Rourke leaned in, his eyes hard and greedy. If it's real, someone can sell it. But if she's right, if that thing wakes up, then none of us are getting paid. We're just getting buried. Daniel looked at the tunnel mouth. It breathed cold, damp air, smelling of wet limestone and something metallic. Something old. She's the architect, he remembered Matthias saying. He switched on his dictaphone. I am going in. Rourke shrugged. Be my guest. Just do not touch the merchandise. Daniel stepped into the darkness, leaving the blinding sun behind. As he descended, the sounds of the modern world faded, replaced by the rhythmic drip 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 of water and the sound of his own breathing. He was not rescuing her. He realized that now. He was walking into her trap. The tunnel did not behave like a natural formation. For the first 50 meters, it was crude, rough-hewn limestone scarred by pickaxes and modern pneumatic drills. The air was thick with the dust of Rourke's excavation. But as Daniel descended past the 60-meter mark, the texture of the world changed. The rough walls smoothed out. The floor leveled. The smell of damp earth vanished, replaced by a scent that Daniel could not place. It smelled sterile. Like the inside of a server room, or the air after a lightning strike. Ozone and absence. He ran his hand along the wall. It was not stone anymore. It was a composite, black, seamless, and cold to the touch. It absorbed the beam of his torch rather than reflecting it. This does not line up, he whispered. Neolithic sites are mud brick and stone circles. They are not, this. He reached the end of the corridor. It opened into a circular chamber that defied every chapter of history he had ever read. It was vast, the ceiling lost in shadows. In the center stood a monolith. It was not a religious idol or a pillar. It was a mechanism. A complex geometry of interlocking rings made of a dull, gray metal that seemed to hum on the edge of hearing. And there, standing before it, illuminated by the glow of a tablet computer, was Elena Ward. She was not tied up. She was not injured. She looked pristine. She was wearing field gear, her hair tied back in a severe bun, her posture that of a conductor facing an orchestra. Daniel stepped into the light. Elena. She did not jump. She did not turn around immediately. She finished typing a sequence on her screen, then slowly pivoted to face him. Her expression was terrifyingly calm. You're late, Daniel, she said softly. Her voice was not the trembling whisper of a victim. It was the lecture hall voice he knew so well. I expected you to be faster with the flight logs. Rourke said you were down here, Daniel said, keeping his distance. He raised his dictaphone, almost like a weapon. He said you were not a hostage. A hostage? Elena smiled faintly. No. I am an accelerant. Elena, look at this place, Daniel gestured to the impossible walls. What is this? This should not exist. This is advanced technology buried in the Stone Age. You re-asking the wrong question, she corrected him. You re-asking what it is. You should be asking why it was left behind. She walked over to the monolith, running her hand along its surface with a reverence she had never shown to any human being. We call them the first custodians, she began, her tone shifting into pure academic exposition. A civilization that peaked 12,000 years ago. Before the ice melted. Before the floods. That's Atlantis nonsense, Daniel snapped. That's pseudoscience. Is it? Elena tapped the metal ring. A low resonance filled the room, vibrating in Daniel's teeth. Does this look like a myth to you? Does it look like a metaphor? She turned back to him, her eyes sharp. They did not die out, Daniel. They were not destroyed by a comet or a god. They abdicated. They realized that their knowledge was becoming dangerous. So they locked it away. They built these vaults to wait until humanity was ready. And the order? Daniel asked. Brother Matthias. The order are the janitors, Elena said with disdain. For centuries, they found these sites. And what do? They bury them. They hide the evidence. They curate history to keep it safe, boring, and linear. They believe humanity is a child that should not play with matches. And Rourke. Rourke is a brute. He thinks this is just a very expensive antique. He wants to sell the casing. He does not understand that the value is not the machine, it's the data inside it. Daniel lowered the dictaphone slightly. The reality of the situation was settling in. So you used them. You used Rourke to dig it up. You used the order to clear your tracks. And I used you, Daniel, she said gently. I needed a witness. Someone credible. Someone who would document the moment the silence ended. You want to publish this? Daniel shook his head. Elena, if this gets out, it breaks everything. Religion, history, politics. It's chaos. History is not erased, Daniel. It's curated. And I am tired of the curation. I am tired of the lie. She turned back to the machine. The order calls this containment. I call it censorship. I am going to wake it up. Elena, stop. Daniel took a step forward. Matthias sent me here to observe, but he also said this was a liability. If you turn that on, then the world changes, she finished. We stop being children living in the ruins of our parents' house. We become the owners. Suddenly, the hum in the room grew louder. The rings on the monolith began to rotate, slowly at first, then faster. The air pressure dropped. Daniel's ears popped. The static on his dictaphone screamed. It's not just a library, is it? Daniel yelled over the rising noise. Elena looked at him, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of mania in her eyes. Not madness, but the absolute, blinding arrogance of intellect. No, she shouted back. It's a broadcast. And I am about to put us on air. From the tunnel entrance behind Daniel, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. It was not Rourke. Rourke was loud, this arrival was silent. Brother Matthias stepped into the chamber. He was still wearing his suit, immaculate despite the dust. He held a device in his hand, not a weapon but a small, black box with a single antenna. MS. Ward, Matthias said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the mechanical hum perfectly. Your hypothesis is flawed. Elena spun around. You see not stop it, Matthias. The sequence is locked. We do not intend to stop the machine, Matthias said calmly. We intend to isolate the user. He pressed a button on the box. A high-pitched pulse emitted from the device. It did not hit the machine. It hit Elena. She gasped, clutching her head, dropping to her knees. The tablet clattered to the floor. What did you do? Daniel shouted, rushing towards her. Neutralization of the operator, Matthias stated. She is attempting to interface with a system designed for a different physiology. She assumes the custodians were human. They were not. The rings on the monolith were spinning violently now. The gray metal began to glow with a sickly, violet light. Daniel. Elena screamed, her voice strained with pain. Do not let him close the loop. The truth is right there. The truth, Matthias said, walking past Daniel towards the machine, is a pathogen. And we are the quarantine. Daniel stood between the spinning machine, the collapsing woman, and the man in the suit. He looked at his dictaphone. It was recording. This is not speculation, he thought. This is the end of the world. Rourke. Daniel yelled, hoping the mercenary was within earshot. If you want your payday, get down here. They re-shutting it down. Far up the tunnel, a heavy, mechanical clanking began. Rourke had not left. He had brought the heavy machinery. The three forces were about to collide. Logic, Daniel. Control, Matthias. Greed, Rourke. And in the center, Elena, trying to steal fire from gods she did not understand. The chamber began to shake. The tunnel entrance exploded inward. It was not a cave-in, it was a breach. Caleb Rourke did not walk in, he stormed in, flanked by 2 mercenaries carrying industrial cutting tools and assault rifles. "Step away from the merchandise," Rourke roared, his voice bouncing off the impossible black walls. "I do not care if you monks or reporters. This is a salvage operation now." The chamber was vibrating so violently that Daniel had to brace himself against a pillar. The violet light from the machine pulsed like a dying heart, casting long, sick shadows. Brother Matthias did not even turn to face the gunman. He kept his eyes on the machine. "Mr. Rourke," Matthias said, his voice eerily calm amidst the chaos. "Your contract is terminated. This site is designated biohazardous." "Biohazard my arse." Rourke raised his rifle. "That's platinum casing. Boys, cut it loose." One of the mercenaries stepped toward the spinning rings. "Do not," Daniel yelled. "It's radioactive." "It's," the mercenary raised his cutter. The arc of the plasma torch touched the spinning metal. There was no spark. No sound of cutting metal. Instead, the mercenary simply unspooled. In a nanosecond, his body lost cohesion. He did not explode, he dissolved into a mist of red biological matter that was instantly sucked into the machine's vents. Rourke froze, his face pale beneath the grime. What the hell was that? "Assimilation," Matthias noted, checking his watch. "Biomass is accepted as fuel. Inefficient, but functional." In the confusion, Elena had recovered. She crawled across the floor, blood trickling from her nose, her eyes fixed on the central core of the machine. "They do not understand, Daniel," she rasped, pulling herself up. "They see a weapon. They see money. It's an interface. Elena, get back." Daniel scrambled towards her, but the air pressure threw him back. "I am the architect," Elena shouted at the machine. She reached out with both hands, bypassing the spinning rings, aiming for the static light in the center. "I claim the knowledge. I claim the first silence." She plunged her hands into the light. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The spinning ceased. The noise cut out. The chamber was plunged into absolute, ringing silence. Elena stood there, her hands buried in the machine, her face illuminated by the violet glow. She looked beatific. Triumphant. "I see it," she whispered. "I see the timeline. It's editable." She looked at Daniel. She smiled. "I can rewrite us, Daniel. I can make it so the van never came." Matthias took a step back. He adjusted his cufflinks. "She has made contact," he said flatly. "Initiate locking protocol." The change did not happen to the room. It happened to Elena. Her smile froze. Not metaphorically, physically. The skin of her face began to harden, turning the color of the gray metal. The transformation raced down her neck, across her shoulders, turning flesh into the seamless, black composite of the walls. "Elena!" Daniel screamed. He lunged forward, grabbing her shoulder. It was hard as stone. And cold. So incredibly cold. Her eyes were still moving, darting frantically in panic. She was not rewriting the machine. The machine was rewriting her. "Help me," she choked out, but her voice sounded metallic, synthesized. It's not a library. It's a container," Matthias finished for her. The machine roared back to life, but this time, it pulled. It pulled Elena in. Her legs fused with the floor. Her arms fused with the core. She was not dying. She was becoming a component. A living circuit board designed to process the data for another 10,000 years. Rourke panic fired. Bang. 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 The bullets hit Elena's petrified back and ricocheted off harmlessly. We're leaving." Rourke screamed, turning to run. But the tunnel he had entered through was gone. The black walls had flowed like water, sealing the exit. No exits, Matthias said. Sanitization is required. The floor beneath Rourke and his remaining men opened up. Not a trapdoor, but a pore in the rock. They fell into the dark, screaming, until the stone swallowed their cries. Daniel was left alone with the monk and the statue that used to be Elena. He backed away until his back hit the cold wall. He held up his dictaphone, his hand shaking uncontrollably. You knew this would happen, Daniel accused Matthias. You let her touch it. We needed a fresh processor, Matthias said. He walked up to the statue of Elena. He touched her cheek. It was metal now. The old custodian had failed. The data was leaking. A mess. Ward was compatible. Her intellect was sufficient to hold the seal. Elena's eyes were the last thing to go. They were locked on Daniel. Frozen in a scream of realization. She had wanted to possess the history. Now she was the history. The violet light faded to a dull, steady pulse. Elena Ward was gone. In her place stood a perfect, silent sentinel, holding the weight of a forgotten civilization. Matthias turned to Daniel. The breach is sealed. The signal is contained. You killed her, Daniel whispered. We employed her, Matthias corrected. She has tenure now. Forever. He walked toward Daniel. There was no exit. Daniel was trapped. And what about me? Daniel asked, his voice cracking. Am I fuel? Or am I a component? Matthias stopped. He looked at the dictaphone in Daniel's hand. You are the witness, Mr. Hargreaves. A system requires a closed loop. She is the lock. You are the record of why the lock exists. Matthias reached out and tapped the wall. A section slid open, revealing the cool night air of the Turkish desert. Go home, Daniel. Write your story. Tell the world about the crazy archaeologist and the tragic accident in the tunnel. Tell them she died chasing a myth. And if I tell the truth? Daniel asked. If I play this tape? Matthias smiled that thin, terrible smile. Then people will laugh. They will call you a conspiracy theorist. And eventually, you will stop believing it yourself. That is the beauty of the system. It protects itself. London. 3 weeks later. The coffee shop near Trafalgar Square was noisy. The rhythm of the city had returned to normal. Daniel sat at a corner table. His laptop was open. The file on the screen was titled, The Ward Disappearance, A Tragic Cave-In. It was a good article. Fact-checked. Sober. It described how Caleb Rourke, a rogue treasure hunter, had lured a brilliant historian to an unstable dig site. It described the collapse. The heroic but failed rescue attempt. It was the version the police accepted. The version Elena's parents accepted. Daniel's finger hovered over the publish button. In his pocket, the dictaphone felt heavy. He had not listened to it. He knew that if he played it, he would hear the sound of a human being turning into stone. He looked out the window. He saw a white van drive by. He saw a man in a gray suit reading a newspaper. He realized now that the world was not held together by laws or governments. It was held together by the silence of men like Matthias. And now, men like him. He thought of Elena, standing alone in the dark, holding the door shut against the impossible. History is not erased, he murmured, repeating her words. It's curated. Daniel deleted the draft. He opened a new email. Addressed to the editor. Subject, resignation. He closed the laptop. He took the dictaphone out of his pocket, placed it on the table, and crushed it under the heel of his boot. Plastic shattered. The memory card snapped. He stood up, put on his coat, and walked out into the blind, happy, oblivious crowd. Voice of Brother Matthias, voiceover, the incident has been contained.